Good morning and welcome back to math class. Glad all of you are here again today. We have discussed these cash discounts and the defaults on the last two class sessions. On the original class notes for 4.3, I was referring to the original default if there was no net date told and used notes that went with the old book. You guys went away, did your homework, and came back and said, no, the dates in the book don't match the dates that in the answers. And once again, I assured you that 20 days was the default. After calling Steve Wilson, who's the author of the book, yesterday and having a lengthy discussion with him, he said as he wrote this book, he did significant research in what was the common default on ordinary and only on ordinary dating, and that more people agreed that net 30 was the default for ordinary. The 20 days after the last discount ends is the same as we talked about, so you should have had no trouble with end of month, you should have had no trouble with extra dating, and no trouble with receipt of goods. To clarify things, if you would go to page 114, 4.3, problem number 11. The default should be on problem 11. It should say May 29th, 1/15, comma, net n/30. Then you'll get the answer that's in the book. On problem 13, October 11, it should say 3/10, 2/20, comma, n/30. Christine said after class the other day, she said, I do some book work, and every time we've had ordinary dating, I have net due on 30. Again, the last two books we used prior to this one used the same rule for ordinary as it did for the other three datings. I was using that information. And he actually, in the front of this book, does say that ordinary is the one that has a net 30. So we'll go with that one. I hope it hasn't caused a lot of frustration. And the other ones would all be fine, 20 days after the date that the last discount ends. So does that clear up that? Can we lay it to rest until review for the test? Great. Then what we want to do, and I'm going to have to reach down here. I realized I don't have my notes out today. I got my tote bag here, but I didn't get everything out I needed. We are ready to talk about well, let's first of all ask if there's any questions on 4.4, markup. Markup on selling price, markup on cost. Homework 4.4. The main difference in markup on selling price and markup on cost, we're going to do both of those with a CMS table, is that when you do markup on cost, you're going to put the 100 next to cost. When it says markup on selling price, you're going to put the 100 next to selling price. Throughout the rest of the semester, there will be problems that we're going to deal with. And anytime they say markup, they're going to tell you whether that markup is on cost or markup is on selling price. That'll be clear through to the final. There'll be problems on the final that'll say markup on cost, markup on selling price. So you're going to have to deal with anytime you see markup on cost, markup on selling price, instead of using old change new, use that CMS table and get the 100 under percent either on cost or markup, depending on what the situation is. So any questions on 4.4's homework? Patrick?
Number 25 it was.
We're there. That's what we're going to do this right now.
Okay.
His problem is, which is the larger markup, a 35% markup on cost or a 25% markup on selling price? That's the part that we didn't get completed on our last class, and we're going to do that first thing right now.
I figured out the 27 and 29, but I still can figure out 25.
All right. 27 and 29. We'll just do 25 when we get done here, okay? Because I doubt that anyone else got those figured out. Let me find my sheet. I didn't get organized before class. Here we go. We're on the page that says on the top, to convert markups when I have a markup on cost or a markup on selling price and I want to convert it to the markup on the other side, if I have the markup on cost, I want the markup on selling price, or if I have the markup on selling price and I want it on cost, I'm going to use a CMS table. But what I'm going to do is have percents on both sides. Let me get out my markers and we'll get going. Number 1 says I have a markup on cost of 20%. I'm going to start with a CMS table. I'm going to put percents on both sides. I like putting cost on this side and putting sell on this side. When I have a markup on cost, I put 100 by cost. When I have a markup on selling, I put 100 by selling. So what we're going to do to convert these is start out with a CMS table, 100 next to C on the cost side, 100 next to S on the selling price. I want to know if the markup on cost is 20%, so I'm going to put a 20 right here, what is the markup on selling price? So I'm looking for the percent of markup on selling price. Does anyone see anything that I can do to fill out any more information on my chart?
120 on the
That's right.
on the cost.
I'm over here on cost and I can put 120. Now, I can set up a proportion by ignoring the top line. I've got 20 is to 120, proportionally the same as X is to 100. Do cross products. What do I end up with as the markup on selling price that would be the same as a markup on cost of 20%? Let's round this to 2 decimal places.
16.67.
16.67, that's right. And that's going to be a percent. The markup on cost is always going to be a larger number than the markup on selling price. Is there a question on that one? Anytime we've got one markup and we're going to compare it to the other, we need to do the CMS table with percents on both sides. Next problem. Let's read it and see what we're going to do. It says my markup on cost is 30%. What is the markup on selling price? I always end up doing the cost on the left side, the selling price on the right side, put 100 in both spots. I know that the markup on cost is 30%. Patrick, do your thing. What do we do next?
Bottom on the on cost
Is?
130.
Good. This is a markup, so we're adding. So this is 130, and I'm actually looking for the X. Should my number be larger than 30 or smaller than 30 that I get as an answer? Smaller. Markup on selling price compared to a markup on cost. The same markup is always smaller on selling. What do we get as an answer there? 2 decimal places. I'm ignoring the top row. $23.08. 23.08, I agree. And I think that we should agree that 2 decimal places is where we're going to round on a regular basis. We don't want to round just to 23, and we don't need to carry it out any further than that. Try the next problem. It says markup on cost is 100%. What is the markup on selling price? Markup on cost is 100%. What is the markup on selling price? It's kind of an interesting one. Or I like it at least. Markup on cost is 100%. That means I put 100 here. We're going to pick on Patrick one more time. What do you know, Patrick?
200.
200 goes down here. Does everyone see where Patrick's getting those numbers?
Mm-hmm.
This is a plus? Great. Put our X here. Who's got the answer? What'd you get?
X equals 50.
Nice. X equal 50. That's right. So a 50% markup on selling price is the same as a 100% markup on cost. Now we're going to switch and use some markup on selling price and find out what the markup on cost is. Number 4 says markup on selling price is 70%. Put my 70 right there, put my 100 here, put my 100 here. Okay. Can I pick on Patrick or should I pick on someone else? Here, okay, we know this is what we're looking for is an X. There's one more number that I can come up with. Who knows where that number is and what it is? Huh?
The cost on the sell side.
Good. She says, I can come up with this. What is that number? Do you know?
Well, I don't know if I'm supposed to subtract the 70 from the 100 or if I'm supposed to add those together. 170 then.
30. Karen?
30.
30.
30. Are you with me? 30 and 70 is 100.
Oh, I know that.
It's okay. And that's exactly why we get together and go over all of these situations in class. And it will really help. Last night's homework makes sense too. Sure. It's a building block. So I ignore the bottom. I'm going to set up my proportion to say 100 becomes X if 30 becomes 70. That's exactly what the proportion says. What did somebody get as an answer? Is this number going to be larger than 70 or smaller than 70? Larger. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. You're sharp today. 233.33. Okay, one more and then we'll be finished with this section and we'll do Patrick's question. The markup on selling price is 13%. What is the markup on cost? Try it on your own. We'll get it on the screen here. I know that the markup on selling price is 13%. So what's my, how many? 87. Thank you. I've got an X here. I ignore the bottom. We're at 14.94. And it's larger than the 13. And there's not just a way I see to look at those and know what they are without just going ahead. I can always know that the number should be bigger or smaller, but I don't have a very good feel for what those are without just doing the cross products. Okay. Is that working? Kari?
Why does this 100 go by the C, not the X?
On this example, this is my percent of markup on cost. This is my percent of markup on selling. So I'm doing the 2% compared to each other. This side is percent of markup based on cost. This one is percent of markup based on selling. So I put 100 on both of those to make the comparison. In the earlier homework, when we were just doing an amount of money with a markup based on selling, we just had 100 in one spot. This is because we're comparing two markups. Okay. Patrick wanted to do number 25. So let's do it. It says, which is larger, a 35% markup on cost or a 25% markup on selling? Well, I think we just take one of those, do the calculation, and compare it to the other one. Which one do you want to do?
Doesn't make any difference
Okay.
to me.
I'm going to start with that. Which is larger, a 35% markup on cost? So let's just do our 35% markup on cost here. Then we'd have our 135. I'm going to solve that for X. And if X is bigger than 25, then the 35% markup is larger on cost. And if that X is less than 25, then the 25% markup on selling price is larger. Who's got their calculator cranking? How many?
25.93.
25.93 when we don't want to round. Are you with me?
We don't want to round?
Oh, no, we want to leave it just like
Oh,
that.
okay.
I mean, we want to round it to 2 decimal
Okay,
places.
yeah.
So it says, how does 25.93 compare to 25%? Well, it's larger. Therefore, the 35% markup on cost is larger than a 25% markup on selling price. Did that answer your question,
Yeah,
Patrick? That's probably a more complicated problem than 27 or 29. Okay, are there other questions about 4.4? Okay, then let's do 4.6. 4.6, I think you'll have a real comfort level with. It's sort of a culminating process in things we've done throughout this whole chapter. It brings some things together, and we're going to be marking down. So instead of adding when we mark up, when we do old change new, the change is going to be a minus. We're changing it by marking it down. And then what we're going to do in the end is discuss the kind of losses that we have when we mark down, or if we have any kind of a loss. Okay? Markdowns. When an item, let's telescope in here a little bit, zoom in. When an item is placed on sale, we mark it down from the original price. So the original price is always going to be the old, and it's going to have the 100 next to it. We are no longer doing CMS tables. We're only doing that when it's a markup on cost, a markup on selling price. When we do markdowns, we're going to go back to old, change, new, okay? I want to find the original. No, it says the original price was $66. The markdown was 35%. How much is, or what amount is, the reduced price? The markdown is always from original price. So we don't, markups can be from cost, markups can be from selling price, but markdowns are always from old. So we want to go back to the old change new table. In this particular problem, I've got 100. I've got a markdown of 35%. Since it's a markdown, I know that the change is negative. I end up with 65%. I'm looking for new price when I originally had $66 as the price, so I can totally ignore the middle line with change. I'm going to go 100% became 65% as 66 became X. Does that proportion make sense? I'm going to do cross products, and I ended up with $42.90. And we're going to round to cents, 2 decimal places.
The same way you did it.
You could, if you wanted to, have put the X next to change. That would have given you the amount that the item was being marked down, and then subtracted that from the original amount and gotten the new price. Does that make sense? Like if I have an item that is $50 and I mark it down $20, I can subtract and say the new price is $30. Or if I know the percentage, I can go directly to the new price by just ignoring the middle on our proportion. And if somebody asked you what was the amount of the markdown, that would be the amount of the change. Your X would go here. Okay, new situation. It says the reduced price is $84. You're looking at the sticker on something that you want to buy, and right above it is a sign that says you just saved 30%. So I know that the new price is $84. You've saved 30%. Question, if you could peel that sticker off, I know we've all done that, looked underneath it. What was the original price before we saved all of that money? We're going to set that up on an old change new table. We know that, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. We know that old percent is always 100. We know that new amount is $84. We know that it was a markdown. I'm going to put a negative right there, 30%. So what percent is the new item of the old? 70, that's right. Instead of adding, I subtract because it's a markdown. I'm looking for old price. I can therefore ignore the middle and set up my proportion. Who's got the number, the magic number that if I could peel that sticker? It was $120 before, and I've done that many times. I go shopping. I want to know what it was before they pasted. Yes, Holly's saying she does the same thing. You peel those stickers off to see what was underneath there. Right. I'm always curious to see if I'm getting it for what I thought I should be paying. That's right. Does that one make sense? I think that's a very powerful proportion. If I know how much it is off, I can kind of do some brainstorming and kind of some calculations in my head and find out what the new price is. But backing into the old price when you've got the new, this is the, I think, slickest way to come up with that number. Next question says, an item usually sells for $219. Today it is on sale for $179. How much am I going to save? Let's flip over our paper and see what's going on. Again, old, change, new. I always know that 100 goes here. Used to cost $219. Now it costs $179. I want to know, what percent did I save? How much was it marked down? It was marked down 40 bucks. Good. $40 is how much I saved. But I want to know what percent I saved. Do you see the proportion? What'd you get?
18.26.
18.26. Anyone need help setting that up? It's 100 over X, 219 over 40. The nice thing about these proportions is you don't have to remember formulas. You just set up your 6 lines, look at what you've got, calculate the missing pieces on one side or the other, put an X on what you're looking for. Anytime you've got 3 of the 4, put an X there, you can come up with the answer. Does that one make sense? The last one's kind of long and complicated. We're going to do it together, and it's going to draw information from the very beginning of this section on absolute losses, profits, and operating losses. You are a business owner. You buy a chair to put in your shop for $210. You have allowed, in marking this chair up, a total of $75 per chair when you buy these chairs for operating expenses, and you hope to make $105 per chair as profit. So we need to know a few things about this chair, like how much we're going to put it on the market for, what is our original selling price going to be. Then I want to know, if it doesn't sell, what would be the maximum percent of markdown that I can take without incurring any operating loss? And what would be the maximum amount of markdown that I could take without incurring an absolute loss? Okay, so you're the owner, manager of your own business. I'm going to draw you the line the way I see it. How much did my chair cost originally? $210. So I see the cost of goods is $210. How much did I allow for operating expenses? $75 is operating expenses. So when I add $210 and $75, what number do I come up with? And what do I call $285? Break-even point. That's right. Remember that from earlier in this chapter? That's the break-even point. After that, I added on another $105 for profit. Yes? When I add those together, what number do I come up with? 390. What do I call 390? The original selling price. And I'm going to put that down as original selling because it's an ugly chair and we're not going to sell it. Bad decision to buy it. Okay? I want to know, huh?
90.
Excuse me?
That's $390.
$390. How much? I've got 390. I've got 210 here plus 75 plus the 105 equal $390. Just stick it in your calculator one more time. Let's all get to 390. So you've bought the chair for 210. That's the cost of the good. You had $75 built into the original selling price for operating expenses, which made your break even $285. You were hoping to make a profit of $105 on this chair, marking it up for a total original selling price of $390. It doesn't sell. We decide we need to get rid of this chair. Question, from the original selling price, and I'm under here working, how far can I mark it down before I incur an operating loss? What's the minimum I want to sell it for?
$285.
Because that's called the break-even point, right? What's the maximum amount of markdown I should take then? 105, my profit, that's right. If I mark it down, $105, I'll be at the break-even. So, you understand, my sticker says $390 on this chair. What percent can I mark that down and not incur an operating loss? How much that would be, let's talk this over. I'm going over here as old, change, new. The dollars on old are $390 because that's my original selling price. I could mark it down to a total of $85, which would be $105 change. I'm very sloppy today. $105 worth of markdown or change. So the percent that would be could be calculated by how much? 26.92. I agree. Now, obviously, we're mathematicians here today, so 26.92 is the correct answer. But if I was going to run a sale, then I'm probably going to run a sale at 25% off to get it down to close to break even. But we're not going to round to that. We're going to leave them at these, And obviously, you're not going to be in a retail business and run something at 26.92% off. But if you're going to run it at 30% off, oh, that's not dollars, that's percent. If you're going to run it at a 30% off sale, you're going to lose money. Are you with me? You're going to be below break even. Okay. Next question. How much can I mark it down from the original selling price? What percent could I mark it down without incurring an absolute loss? Well, I'd need to sell it at what point to not incur an absolute loss? I'd need to sell it for at least $210, right, cost of goods. So if I didn't care if I had an operating loss, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I didn't have an absolute loss, new situation. Can you get another sheet of paper? I'm going to go old, change, new. Again, I'm at the 390 mark. How much could I mark it down to? 210. How much of a markdown is that? 180, that's right. It's the sum of my profit and my operating expenses. Question is, what percent could I mark it down without incurring any absolute loss?
46.15.
So if I'm selling this chair at 50% off, I'm selling it for less than I paid for it. I could run a 40% off sale or a 45% off sale. We're coming up with an exact number. Obviously, as a business owner, you wouldn't be running a 46.15% off sale, right? But you wouldn't want to run it at 50% off or you would be incurring an absolute loss. Great. What we're going to do in our next class session, which we are not going to tape, is we're going to review for the test over this chapter.
What is the test?
And then we're going to have a test. This is actually Friday. People on the tape don't care. Our review is on Monday. Our test is on Wednesday. So we'll be reviewing. And what I'll do here is tell you that let's look at the review. This book is wonderful because there is a review at each, at the end of each section. And on page 147, the chapter review on 4.9. If you would do 1 through 14,